Welcome back. You're in the Politbureau. South Africa's governing party, the ANC, is worried about its electoral message being distorted. So 4 more members will work in conjunction with current spokesperson Pule Mabe moving toward next year's election. Former spokesperson Jackson Mtembi and Zizi Kotwa are being added to the mix, as are social economist Pelisa Nkomo and student activist Fasiha Hassan. The move has been seen by analysts as a demotion for the current spokesperson. Here's Mabe in May this year, rubbishing suggestions that then Northwest Premier Pule Mabe would be removed.
For the first time, journalists are newskeepers. For the first time, instead of breaking news, journalists are telling us news. You know, you are telling us what is news. So this is news to the ANC because both in the National Working Committee, of which I sit, there's never been a discussion on the replacement of a premier. So effectively, you are telling us things that are not part of the makeup of our own discussions. What I can tell you is that when we discuss, we'll be able to tell you what are the issues and what are the decisions.
Well, for the record, Pule Mabe announced his resignation less than 2 weeks after that bite, after Pule Mabe suggested to the media that we were making up the story. But joining us to get to grips with this moves by the ANC to add to their communications offering, the man himself, Pule Mabe, alongside someone that joined us already this morning, Lunkuna Mguni. Let's clear the air. Are you being demoted, Pule?
Well, thank you, and thank you for inviting us today. You will remember that, and maybe to just first clarify the initial clip that you showed. You know, when the ANC has not taken a decision on a particular matter, even if that issue is in the public domain, the party must be given the space to reflect on that. Once it has reflected and a decision has been taken, only then can you convey and communicate a decision. That's why the subsequent clips, it was us who communicated that same decision. But when it was being covered by the media, it was not a decision. It would have been unfair of us to go out and make a reflection on something that has not been made a decision by the organization and reflected as such. As it relates to reinforcement, it is more reinforcement one that will allow us to be able to expand on our plurality of voices, tap into the diverse sections of society, and make sure that we stick to the mantra, many voices, one message.
Okay, Pule, but let me ask that. I mean, do you see this in any way, shape or form as a demotion, though? Because you are national spokesperson. It seems a little bit odd that 4 more people are going to be added to the communications battalion of the ANC.
Well, it's not necessarily because I saw that. They are not necessarily coming in as spokespersons. Because the spokesperson of the ANC, it could be Pule Mabe, it could be Nicholas Bau, any other person. What is the document? Who appoints the spokesperson of the ANC?
The NEC.
The National Executive Committee, as instructed by the 54th National Conference, adopted the communications protocols. These protocols are important to outline how the ANC carries and executes its own communications machinery. But beyond that, the constitution of the ANC, under Rule 16, outlines the roles of officials. For instance, the president pronounces on policy. The Secretary General pronounces on decisions of the National Executive Committee and the National Working Committee. Alongside that, there is a spokesperson. But what you also do, because this is part of our, you should be asking me that what are your electioneering, what are your communications electioneering efforts?
Okay, well, we'll get to that in one second. I'm going to bring Lukhona into the conversation. We'll find out exactly how these 4 spokespeople who aren't spokespeople will be working in conjunction with you. How difficult is it going to be for the ANC to stay on message if it already battles to speak with one voice with one spokesperson? Case in point being the land issue.
You raise an important one. The land issue, the ANC has failed itself dramatically, and I'll say why. And that is because they have not charted a way forward of the ANC. I would have thought by now a governing party that takes itself seriously would have mapped out a serious intellectual document that engages society One, on the scenarios at which land expropriation without compensation would be effective, and also a discussion on land management. How do we manage this land going forward? How do we deal with questions of foreign investors coming in to own land and so on? Yes, they've got resolutions on the question of land from their 54th conference, but I think a much more expansive and detailed document that is having the potential to become a policy is what they need. Now, if you create many voices that must speak, the problem of the ANC is exactly its failure to have a packaging that is centralized, that actually is forward-looking. They are often talking about day-to-day runnings within the party. They've stopped being agenda setting, and I think that's one thing that
reactive
the party,
instead of proactive.
Very reactive. When they need to be proactive, limited by their own differences from within the party in terms of how do they reach consensus on certain contentious points within the organization.
I'm going to bring Pule back in here. Give us the nuts and bolts. How is it going to work with you being the national spokesperson and these 4 other people that are going to add their voice to the ANC communications team? How is that going to function?
I think he is raising a very important point, to be proactive rather than being reactive. Now, one of the things that you are doing, that's why I was trying to clarify that they are not spokespersons, they are spokespersons and all of that. If you look, for instance, they bring in certain expertise. You are trying to bring in people who will become subject specialists, especially for purposes of your own electioneering drive. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have suddenly demoted your national spokesperson. You will still have, in real terms, you'll still have one national spokesperson of the ANC.
But Pule, I mean, this is how it looks. You've got 2 former spokespeople joining the current spokesperson.
Yes.
It suggests that perhaps, I mean, you need some help.
No. Let me explain. When you bring in 2 spokespersons, because they are part of the communication subcommittee of the ANC. Now, in our own, you see, you are now pushing us to even get into matters of strategy. But in our own communications drive as the African National Congress, we do have something called rapid response teams. These rapid response teams are teams that are brought on as part of your own communications plan going into elections. It means that you will bring people who are subject specialists on numerous and an array of other issues. So that, for instance, on ENCA, you will have specific programs that deal with economics. You'll have specific programs that deal with health issues. We must be able to bring forward, like you do with analysts yourselves, we must be able to bring forward people who are experts in those specific fields, so that it's not a matter of an announcement or just spinning. You also want these people, these credible people that you are bringing, to also be able to carry the message of the ANC, 1, with greater authority, 2, with greater essence of knowledge, themselves having been part of that specific sector. So this is part of what we do it all the time. During an electioneering period, we will bring people who possess certain technical expertise to be able to ramp up, because the message of the ANC must be understood, especially going to this period.
I completely understand, Pule.
Yes.
We're going to come back to the nuts and bolts and perhaps maybe an idea of exactly how this is going to unfold.
Yes.
But bringing back Likona, is the ANC trying to say too many things to too many people? I mean, I understand you're talking about reinforcing the communication structure and beefing up your message in the roll-up to elections, Pule, but if you try and say too many things to too many people, do you not run the risk of not focusing on your core constituency?
Well, the ANC's core constituency is a broad church, so there isn't one single constituency of the ANC. It's part of its weakness, by the way, because it then means you must cater to as many people, as many things, and make promises to everyone, which might lead up to you not acting decisively and quite concretely. So within this framework of a broad church, they do need a multiplicity of voices. Where I don't think I agree with Pule is viewing, I mean, if you say, what is the subject specialist of Jackson Mthembu as is Kodwa, I think that needs probably greater clarification. There are some people that they may have
with both Polisa Nkoma and Fasiha Hassan, you could argue that they're there to speak for women's issues and they're there to speak to young issues.
Fasiha was very central on Fall, and she's accumulated this wealth of knowledge in terms of that specific issues and issues of higher education and all of that. So I think the other two, they do create a cloud in one way or another on Pule's credibility, because I think another thing that the ANC is struggling with is putting across a set of people whom society resonates with, not only in terms of the message, but in terms of values that these individuals espoused and their previous conduct over the years, whether through allegations and whatever or not. So there's also a thing of, do do these 4 people bring the necessary credibility at a values level for the ANC, and is society going to see them different? And of course, you can still clarify the message through these 5 now spokespeople of the ANC and still have problems within leadership at the decision-making processes in the provinces, in the regions, which in one of the surveys that have come out is that even ANC members, about 52% of them, are worried about leadership issues seemingly not being resolved. And you need those two to be part of the ANC's thinking towards the election.
I'm going to give Pule Mabe a last word here. It is something that still needs to be ironed out, the details of which, but has this plan got the buy-in from senior structures of the ANC? Is it a Secretary General sanctioned move? Is it a move from the President? Has it been approved by the National Working Committee?
Well, what I can say, and I think that he's raising quite critical issues. One of the things that you did, before I answer the sanctioning and all of that, one of the things that you do is when you go into an electioneering period, you try and tap into the different experience that your own cadreship bring forward. For instance, Comrade Zizi and Comrade Jackson are both former spokespersons. You will find that their role will be more at a level of strategy. What are the past experiences? Because the issues we deal with in the ANC are almost are common issues. You know, how did we deal with health issues if they would have come up in the 2014 elections? What message did we communicate which resonated with society? Now, you are bringing in that experience because there's almost sort of a reservoir of knowledge as well. So you're not bringing it because you want to plug in many voices. No. The centrality of the ANC message is quite critical. But also what is important is almost everyone in the leadership structure of the ANC must be able to stand up and talk to resolutions of the ANC. Because when we send you to an RGC of the ANC, you are going to be the mouthpiece of the ANC at that level. One of the things we are now doing, which I started doing last week, was actually this week I was in Limpopo, this past week, where we met with communicators from regions and sub-regions. So that
Pule, unfortunately, we're running out of time.
Yes.
A simple yes or no question. You have 10 seconds to answer it. Do you feel challenged at all in your position as national spokesperson of the ANC?
Not at all. That's why I'm here, to try and clarify that position as it relates to our leadership structures. And I mean, we meet in the National Working Committee, we take stock, we do media monitoring. The ANC has got various communications platform. We've got our own mass media unit. We've got our digital communications unit. We do quite a lot of things. We were relaunching ANC today. We are going to relaunch this coming
When is
Friday.
it going to be finalized? Last question from you. When is it going to be finalized? When are we going to see this new team in action? How long?
Well, once we have gone through all the housekeeping issues, you will start to now, and making sure that everyone who's brought on board also understand the set of protocols that govern and guide how the ANC is supposed to carry forward its messaging as it relates to the resolutions of the 54th National Conference.
Thank you very much, Pule. We'll have to leave it at that. That engaging discussion, tough to leave at this stage, but let's chat about what happens when one of the most powerful leaders in the world tweets fake news.